right, so assuming all this works, YouTube tells me we're going live. I am here with Laura Wade. Can you hear me, Laura?
I can. It's good to see you, David.
Awesome. It's good to see you. Um, Ironically, we're here to talk about audio problems, and we had an audio problem. So there's a little bit of a delay with this live stream, but that's one of the things about going live, man, is just stuff happens and you just got to roll with it. So I appreciate you being here, Laura, and rolling with the technical challenges.
Absolutely. I'm super excited for your support and insights today. I had some technical challenges too, and that's why I'm asking for help.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's before we get started and get too far down the road, I want any viewers to know who you are, what you do. So can you give us that little your intro that you give folks?
Yep, absolutely. So my name is Laura Wade, and I'm a psychedelic integration counselor. So I support people in integrating psychedelic experiences, which can be from amazing to terrifying. So they are very powerful tools that can support health and healing in the right settings. So I support people with that. I also treat general issues as well, from anxiety and depression. And I do a podcast on healing with psychedelics. And so I recorded an episode with a guest I was super excited to grab a recording from, yet we had some tech difficulties with this headset. So the recording isn't as clear as I would like. So I'm super excited for your insight on what I can do.
Yeah. Well, wow. So I'm going to back up a second before we start
Mm-hmm.
talking about audio. So you are a therapist, but you're specializing in helping people. You said integration. So integration, if it, and so I assume you said psychedelic. So I know that this is a thing. Oh, there's your dog. All right. Um, I happen to remember your dog's name, Tesla, right?
Yep, that's
All
it. After the scientist.
right. Yeah. So anyway, so you help people who have had psychedelic experiences integrate that experience into their life. Is that right? Explain
That
that.
is correct.
Just explain that a little bit more.
Absolutely. And I also do safety as well. So if someone's decided that they absolutely want to do psychedelics, I can support that person in safety planning. So creating the
Right.
right set and setting. A lot of times people are seeking psychedelics now to heal from substantial traumas.
Right.
A lot of people actually may not remember most of their childhood, and they use
Mm-hmm.
psychedelics or plant medicine to support in healing from trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Without the right support, though, they may relive memories that they have repressed.
Mm.
And that can be very startling if it's unexpected. Though, from a framework of psychology, trauma memories only have a beginning and middle, and they're stored in the amygdala. The amygdala is more where we process information. So the
Mm-hmm.
body and mind are scanning to keep us safe and looking for things that are similar to that beginning and middle.
Mm.
When a memory is able to have a beginning, middle, and end, and psychedelics and plant medicine allow people to relive memories without going into fight or flight or dissociation, that memory then moves from the amygdala to long term storage. So the body is no longer as hypervigilant as it once was. And that's one of the theories. We're not
Mm-hmm.
100% certain that that's what's happening, but that is one of the working theories we have right now
Mm.
around how people are really having substantial results with using psychedelics. So
Wow.
sometimes people seek me out after a psychedelic experience because maybe they relived like childhood sexual assault and
Mm.
they can't stop thinking about it.
Mm.
So how can I support them in integrating the memories, supporting their nervous system and relaxing?
Mm.
And sometimes the integration, they have moments of feeling unconditional love and acceptance and just amazing experiences. But unless
Mm-hmm.
we integrate them into our daily lives, it's not as impactful.
Okay.
It's like going and seeing an amazing orchestra or something just amazing, but unless you integrate it into your life, it doesn't have as much positive impact as it could. So
Gotcha.
those are some of the ways I help people.
Neat. And so your podcast, um, so where this conversation started between me and you was you had a technical problem while you were doing a podcast, and so I said, well, maybe I can help you solve that problem, or kind of understand why these problems happen. So your podcast is about this topic. I mean, how do you explain the podcast part?
Yeah, so I just interview people and they tell their stories with psychedelics.
Okay.
So I don't want just positive stories, I want
Yeah.
realistic stories. So a lot of people have had amazing results. And one person I'm going to be interviewing, I hope soon, had a psychotic break for 6 months. So there are some negative consequences that can happen. So far, everyone I've interviewed has had amazing experiences, but I want to tell the full spectrum
Yeah.
of what's possible, just so people come to the plant medicine with the amount of respect that it deserves.
Yep. Wow. Okay. Well, I know it's such a new field, and there's so many questions about it, and people are trying new things, and there's different laws. I know it's really complicated. So having a podcast where you can consistently talk about it, I can see how that can be super helpful for people who are wanting to learn more about this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and my hope for the podcast is just to help inform people, so that when there's a ballot measure coming up, that people are well informed before they vote.
Interesting.
I personally believe in decriminalization and legalization, which is tricky because sometimes when legalization comes in, really big companies come in and start profiting off of it, where this has been a very indigenous medicine. So how do we respect everyone in this process? How can we support the indigenous people and integrating it and kind of supporting people that have lost those roots in a more holistic way, and not maybe turn it as large into a big corporate thing. It's a tricky subject, and I don't have the right answer on that, but it's something that we discuss in the podcast too.
Yeah, well, neat. So with the audio problems, I think what I would like to do is kind of talk about audio in general, and then I think how we tend to problem solve, and you know this as a therapist. We have a problem and we tend to try to solve that problem. But a lot of times it's helpful to see the bigger picture and to see how it all works. And so, how long have you been podcasting?
I have about a dozen episodes from my previous podcast.
Okay.
And this one I haven't launched yet.
Okay. So you have definitely, you've been dealing with audio for months, right? At least for months. Is that correct?
Yes, but my previous podcast was always with a colleague and myself. So I had all the audio issues kind of worked out. And now that I'm interviewing new people, it's
perfect.
A lot new issues are arising.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a gauge for where you are and all that. Because, the particular problem that you talked about, I want you to tell us what happened. And then what I'll do is try to talk about like what was actually going on there that probably caused that problem, and how you can solve it. So tell us what happened recently.
Yeah, so as a colleague, I highly respect, single dad, so lots of time pressures, and we had tried to make it work, and we just kept on getting postponed, and we finally had a time we could both make it work. He just moved into a new office and hadn't tested his computer yet. So we thought the headset and computer would work, but we couldn't get it working. We both rebooted our computers. So then we tried to problem solve. He called me, so I heard his voice over the phone, yet was recording over Zoom. But he had the headset connected to his phone, and so it was just his computer grabbing the audio that was recorded.
Sure.
Does that make sense? It was
Yeah.
kind of convoluted. Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense. And anytime you record from the microphone on a computer, the one that's built into the computer, what it does is it picks up the computer noise. It picks up more of an echo because that microphone is actually farther away from your mouth than you would like it to be. Like the headset, you asked me earlier, what should I use? And I've been on calls with you before, and you use the headset and that mic, it's right there. So
Mm-hmm.
coming off on the side there. So that's great. Now, for me, what I'm doing is talking into a lavalier mic that is just at my sternum level, so mid chest level. You're getting a lot of noise there, but it's right there, and I can turn my head and it's still right there, and you can turn your head and it's still right there. And so what happens is I call it signal to noise. The signal, which is our voice, it's high because it's close, right? But if you get too close, then you start to get other noise, popping sounds, and
Mm-hmm.
so you want a good balance. And so I can tell you had the right idea with having him use a headset, but it just it fell apart somewhere there. So had I been you with that person, and it's interesting you talked about him being a single dad and there was time pressure in the schedule, because that stuff, that always happens. That's always there. So question for you, did you not know what was going on and then you had the conversation and then you realized it afterwards? Or did you think it was working and then you realize afterwards that it wasn't?
I think my ear is not that refined yet. Like
Mm-hmm.
if the content's amazing, I don't really care what it sounds like. And
Yeah.
so my ear is just not that great. And then I showed the audio to my partner and he was like, "Oh my God, it's awful." And he's been an AV tech and builds his own speakers. So he's probably on the other end of the spectrum
Sure.
of what sounds good.
Right.
So I knew it wasn't best practice to use the laptop microphone, but I was
Okay.
probably just trying to cross my fingers
Yeah.
and maybe it will come out okay.
Yeah. It's hard to fix noisy audio.
Okay.
That's the other thing we need to know. Sometimes you can run it through a processor if you have the right tools, and sometimes it can be a little bit better, but it's always super important to get that clean audio signal from the beginning. As I talk about audio, there's this nagging voice that keeps reminding me in the back of my head that says, the audio you're creating right now is not that great, Dave. And let me tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
Your headset sounds good. My headset sounds good. But we are going through the internet right now with audio. So if the internet decides to be problematic, then our audio becomes problematic. That's another piece of it. So ideally, what I try to get my guests to do is to record locally, meaning on their machine or on their phone. And then I record locally on my machine. And then what I do is bring the two together in post-production, synchronize those two files. That way I've got the highest quality on each end. Now that's overkill. Going back to your point, it's overkill because it doesn't need to necessarily be that good. Does that make sense? But I'm
Well,
wanting it to be as good as possible.
my first podcast with my colleague, we did the dozen episodes. We both recorded on GarageBand. We both had Macs.
Yep.
But you said record on a phone. So he was talking to me on his phone. Could I have just had him turn on voice memo and capture his voice that way? No. Okay.
No. So I've done it so I said on a phone because you can get a high quality recording on a phone, on a mobile device, not through a phone call, but
Okay.
the mobile device itself with a decent microphone will get a good recording. So sometimes when you're doing a Zoom call, what you can do is you can do the Zoom call. You can use your headset. That way I can hear you and you can hear me through the Zoom, through the internet, right? But if you're recording on any device locally at a high quality, then you can give me that file and I can use it. And I've got the best quality, but it's a separate recording. It's the same moment in time that we've recorded, but it's actually two separate recordings. Does that make sense?
So I understand the two separate recordings. That's what
Mm-hmm.
my colleague and I would do
Right,
on GarageBand.
right.
And then we would record on Zoom just as a backup. So we always had two copies in
Yes.
case one failed. What would you have done if you were in my shoes with him?
So I would have never recorded from the mic laptop.
Okay.
I would have known that's like the lowest bar you can go, almost. It is the lowest bar, I hate to tell you. Because the fan noise from a laptop is going to be right there. Um, so I think what I would have done is, and it's hard to know exactly what the circumstances were, I would have said, um, let's record this through Zoom, probably, knowing that there was time constraints on his end and your end, of course. Um, because depending on the technical ability of the guest, it can just be too much. That's why I always ask, like, okay, so have you ever recorded anything? It's kind of like my question earlier to you, like, how much podcasting experience have you had? I was trying to get an idea of how much recording have you done.
Hmm.
And you use GarageBand and a Yeti mic, so that's high level quality. So I know you know how to, whoop. I know you know how to do that. Um,
And so, I mean, he did connect his headset to his phone. I
mhm.
could have had him use, instead of calling me, I could have had him connect to Zoom through his phone
Yes.
with the headset,
Well,
and
that
that
would
would have
have
been
been
better.
good. That would have been better.
That would have
Absolutely.
been better. I didn't think
Absolutely.
of that. Okay.
Yep. That would have been better. You know, anytime you're using Zoom itself or any kind of online conferencing system to do the recording, you are you are assuming that that connection is going to be pretty good, which is a big assumption to make. But it would have been better. I think the reason it didn't sound good was that the microphone was on the laptop, which was far away from his mouth, so the signal to noise ratio was not good, and um, it was picking up probably fan noise. Did I just did I just lose you? Because I got a message that my internet connection was bad.
I got a blip, but I'm still here now.
Okay.
So it cut out for a moment.
Well, probably our live viewers got a perfect example. As I was talking about the internet being a bad connection, I probably disconnected. So now, what I didn't do right, and I sort of did this on purpose, I didn't connect with you beforehand to say, Laura, tell me about your recording experience. Tell me tell me the gear that you have that you're comfortable using that you know works. Um, you know, we should have done that, and I should have gotten you to record locally somehow, um, and then I would have recorded locally. But you know, again, it's like this level of things that you can do, and then there's the reality of of what you finally do. So,
So I like having the backup of Zoom on the telephone with a headset. So
yep,
that will be my backup next time. And you mentioned there's some things you can use to process the sound that might make it sound
Yes,
better. What what
yes.
what are those things?
Well, I'm gonna. You mentioned that you were a GarageBand user, so I would have to do some research and see if there's any kind of noise reduction processing within GarageBand. That's one thing you could do. I am an Adobe user, so Adobe has noise processing plugins that it uses. Um, and so that would be worth looking into to see if that would do it. So let me just tell you when that works and when it doesn't work.
Okay.
So if there were a consistent fan noise from that computer, a lot of times whenever we do recording, the computer, it has a heavy workload and then the fan turns on. And so usually that's a consistent sound. And so noise reduction software, it likes it whenever you have a consistent sound. Then you can say, okay, so that noise, it has a frequency range that's right about, from this frequency to that, where that fan noise is within a certain, so EQ is a word you may know, equalization, or it's kind of like bass and treble. On stereos, we used to adjust bass and treble all the time. So there's a certain frequency where it exists in the sound spectrum of tones from low to high. And then you can say, okay, well, I want that spectrum, I want that to be reduced. Does that make sense? Can you hear me? You're frozen. All right, well, here we go.
Hoping.
There you are. I
Oh,
hear you. I
yeah.
hear you.
I turned off my audio video hoping that the audio would kick back in. So I heard that you select the spectrum that you want to get rid of, kind of. Okay.
Right. You basically tell the software what's the noise that you want to get rid of. And then it runs through a process and you play it back and you say, well, does that sound better or not? So for you, if you're comfortable with GarageBand, do some research, pull up a Google search and put in GarageBand noise reduction. See if anything pops up. It could be that it's a plugin that's already within the system. It definitely exists for the Adobe suite, whether you're using Adobe Premiere for video or the different, I'm blanking on the Adobe name, Audition, mind fart. Yeah, so, but I do have to say, the final thing I'll say about that is that stuff can help, but it doesn't help that much. But it can help. Yeah. And I mentioned two things. There's processing software, but then there's just plain old equalization software, which is another, I'm guarantee a GarageBand does this. Are you familiar with equalization, what that is?
Nope, I'm writing it down right now.
Okay. So equalization or EQ, the simplest way to think of it is bass and treble. Right? So
can you tell me what those are?
Okay, so whenever I was a kid, if I went to my car stereo, there was a knob that had bass and treble. And if I turned it towards bass, then the lower sounds, like the bass guitar or the drums, would get louder. And then the higher sounds, meaning like the higher frequency, the guitars or the cymbals.
Cymbal, yeah.
Yep, those would drop. Okay. So that's equalization is the process of saying I want the louder or the lower sounds to be higher or lower, or the higher sounds to be higher or lower. So it takes your tones, so your low tones and then your high tones, and you can adjust those individually. And it'll do it through bands. Ideally, I could show you this, but I'm afraid Zoom's not gonna like it when I switch over. to show you this on screen. But basically what you can
That's
do
okay.
then is say, okay, well, there's a lot of low sounds in there that I don't like. Or maybe you could find out where that range of a noise is and you could turn that range down. Problem is you might be turning down the voices. So there's a balance there. But that's another great tool to explore. If you go again, if you go into GarageBand and you go to Help and you type in equalization, it'll show you what kind of tools it's got, and then just play around with them. Find your audio file and see if you can make it sound better. So.
And probably less is more. I usually don't play with photo filters, but I had this awesome picture and I didn't duplicate it first. And I was playing around with filters and accidentally saved it, and now I can't go back.
Oh no.
It doesn't look real anymore. So I will keep that in mind as I play around, make a copy, and
yep.
Probably less is more because I want the voices to still sound.
Yeah, good idea. Most audio editors are non-destructive, meaning it doesn't destroy, it doesn't mess with the original file. It takes a copy internally and adjusts that. But that's a good idea to always, if you want to make sure something doesn't get messed up, to work on a copy. So yeah, that's a good idea. But, well, how long has it been? That's almost been 30 minutes since we've been recording, it's hard to believe. So what other audio questions do you have?
I think that helped. I love having the backup idea of headset on phone in case the computer is malfunctioning.
Yep.
I usually do talk to my guests for a 15-minute call beforehand, and I'm thinking I should have it be, instead of, I've been doing it on the phone, but it should be the way that we're going to record.
That's a good idea.
Then I would have known that his computer was having an error that we could have worked on.
Yeah. Do you send them an email beforehand that says, here's the setup, or?
Not yet. That is something that I have a draft copy of. So before the next round of interviews, I will have that. Yeah,
that's a good idea to say, hey, let's have 2 calls. First will be a tech preliminary, get to know you kind of call. And that's where you can set a lot of that type of stuff up as well. Like, tell me what gear you're using. What kind of recording have you done? Have you ever used Zoom? Those kind of questions. Do you have a headset? Do you have a microphone? And you'll find that some people really care about audio quality and they want to sound good. And other people are like, I don't care as long as we can hear it.
And that, like, I listen to podcasts in the car with my partner, and I'm like, oh, it's polyvagal theory, and this is amazing. And to my partner, it's like nails on a chalkboard. He's like, I can't listen to this anymore. Like, the quality is awful. So I know I'm probably on one end of the spectrum, and most of the people are probably in the middle. Like, they really prefer it if I gave them better quality audio.
Absolutely.
And then some people are like my partner, and they won't even listen to it if it is too awful.
Yeah. So it's part of the learning curve of doing just this whole new media, there's lots to learn, and you can just get a little bit better every time. And the more we do it, the better we'll get. So I applaud you for going down this road of doing podcasts on your own now this time. You had help before, it sounds like. So, yeah, way to go. Did you say this podcast is in development? Because I want to make sure people know how to find you and find this content.
Yes, so my old podcast is up under the new podcast name. So if you search Circle's Edge by Laura Wade, iTunes and a couple other places, if you subscribe to that, you'll be getting the new episodes that are about stories of psychedelics. The first 12 episodes that are up there are emotional fitness exercises. So it's how to increase our emotional functional fitness and different practices that you can engage in to do that.
Very cool. I know that you are a really good, well, I was going to say really good therapist. You've not been my therapist, but I can just tell by just by who you are and how you approach things that you must be a really good therapist. And I know you're passionate about this topic, so I'm really excited to see you doing this. And so that web address one more time, where can people find this?
Yep, web address is circlesedge.life, and my email is laura@circlesedge.life. If anyone is thinking about finding a therapist, I have a free guide on how to interview a therapist in your local area. I think interviewing providers is really important to make sure you have a similar, that you and your therapist both have the same idea of how you're going to get to your goal. Mm-hmm. Your therapist isn't going to take you this way. So if anyone emails me, I'm happy to send that to them, and just like providing resources for the community through podcasting and different content.
And so if they're using their podcast player, how do they find you there? What do they type in to the search bar?
Circle's Edge. I think it's still, you just type in Circle's Edge in my name, Laura Wade.
Okay.
Circle's Edge, Laura, it usually pops up. Yeah. Circle's Edge, last name Wade. So.
Sure. Great. Well, thank you for being on this show. I appreciate you for doing that and for bringing up some problems. A lot of us have audio problems and other new media problems, constantly having to deal with stuff. So I appreciate you helping me with this new project, this StoryTech Works workflows. And so, I look forward to hearing what's next for Laura Wade.
And I deeply appreciate your insights too, David. So you helped me come up with new solutions for next time and some solutions for this time. And if I wouldn't have had somebody to talk it out through like you with expertise, I wouldn't have known what to do next time or how to maybe solve some of those things. So thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
I really enjoy talking to you, and I enjoy your insights and wisdom. Thank you, David.
Thank you. All right. Well, take care, Laura. See you next time. I'm going to stop our live stream here. Hang on for a second and we'll say goodbye on the Zoom.